Okay, so before we can actually talk about the most awesome alignment when it comes to the year, we've got to look at the two different types of years that we have. All right. So as you can see here, we're going to talk about the 360. We're going to talk about the 365.2424. All right. How it changed basically everything. So our solar year is considered 365.2424 days, not actually 365, not 364. It's 365.2424 days. Okay. And that gives basically 12 revolutions that you're going to actually see. Now, the lunar year is 354.367 days, and that also gives you your 12 revolutions. Now, this can actually be verified. A lot of people like to debate on whether we should have 13 months or whether we should have 12 months or 11 months. But we can actually verify this by just looking up. And the reason is because you will actually find that eclipses, the pairs of eclipses, are actually 354 days apart. So if you take, like, for instance, on April 20th, 2023, there was a very specific eclipse. And then, of course, it was a total solar eclipse. And then, of course, you're going to see April 8th, 2024. We also had a total solar eclipse. They were 354 days. And so, as you can see, this also goes into the future as much as it goes into the past. They're exactly 354 days apart. Okay. Now, the reason that that's important is because if we had 12 months as we do, and you multiply that by 29.5 days per month, which is an actual lunar cycle, you will find 354. And then, as I said, if you just look up, we don't have to really guess this. We can actually count the days and see that it's 354 days. Okay. All right. So if you take the solar year at 365.2424 days and you take the lunar year at 354.367 days, you will actually find that every year the solar year gains 10.8754 days over the lunar year. Okay. So it's basically overlapping. That means in 33.6 years, they have made a complete circle and are back in sync with each other. Okay. So every year, the solar year is about 10.8754 days longer. This means that the solar year pulls ahead of the lunar year a little bit every year. Okay. And then every 33.6 years, the small difference adds up to exactly one full lap, basically making it at this point, both the solar and lunar years realign with each other, starting the whole process over again. Okay. Now, this 33.6 is exceptionally important, and I'm going to show you why. Because the most perfect solar lunar cycle is known as 33 years, 7 months, and 7 days. That's that 33.6. And this happens to be exactly the life of Jesus Christ. Okay. So we're going to be talking about some numbers here, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you a little math here. If I take 2,520 and I divide that by that 33.6, I actually end up with 75, which means that there are 75 of these perfect solely lunar cycles in 2,520 years. Now, it's going to be exceptionally important here in one moment, but let's go ahead and go to the next one. So where do we get this 252, 2,520 days or years? I'm going to show you exactly where we get that. If you go to the book of Daniel and you go to chapter 12, verse 7 through 9, you will find, and I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto the heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that he shall be for a time, times, and a half. Okay. Now, the way you have to view this is you have to realize that Daniel is, of course, going to end up being the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, they had 360 days that represented a year. So if you take 360 plus 360 plus 360 plus 180, you end up at a very specific number. And I'm going to show you that. Okay. We're going to go ahead and just move forward from here. 360 plus 360 plus 360 plus 180 is 1,260, also known as 3.5 years. Okay. A time times 360, 360 and a half is 1,260, also known as 3.5 years. Now, if you go to Daniel chapter 12, verse 10 through 12, and I'm going to go ahead and change these words just slightly because I don't like the phrase that's being used, wicked, because what it's really talking about is the unaware. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the unaware shall do unaware things, and none of the unaware shall understand, but the aware shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Okay, that's why I have this number right here. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335 days. Okay. And again, circle that right here. And now you're going to see exactly why. Because what we're really talking about is we're talking about the 7 years of tribulation. 7 years equals to exactly 2,520 days if you had 360 days per year. Okay. So it's just that 1,260, which of course is 3.5 years plus 3.5 years, ends up equaling to 2,520. Okay. Now, point I have days here, so you can just chai it up that way as well. 1,260 or 3.5 days. I'm sorry, 3.5 years, but you're actually taking the days of 1,260 plus 1,260 is 2,520. Okay, so I'm just forget days, forget years, just look at the numbers that we're looking at here. Okay. Now, if you take it into years, it's 3.5 years plus 3.5 years equals 7 years. Okay. But now remember what it said about that 75. So when you add in that hidden 75, you actually end up finding out that 1,260 plus 1,260 plus 75 is exactly 1,335 days. Okay. And as you can see, we're going to go back real quick. As you can see here, that's exactly what he's talking about because here it is. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,305 and 30 days, also written as 1,335 days. And you can go back to that where you see that we're talking about the time 360 times 360 plus 360 and a half is 180, which is 180 is half of 360. And that is what takes you to the one that we were talking about. The 1,260 times 2 is 2,520. So 2,520 divided by 33.6 is that 75 that we're talking about. Where do we get the 33.6? We got the 33.6 from the 33 years, 7 months, and 7 days of Jesus Christ's life. And then we also reverse that back to the understanding that when you're talking about a solar year now, at 365.2424 and the lunar year of 354.367, you get this overlap of 10 days, 10.8754 days as it's moving a little bit faster, right? And so therefore it ends up recycling at exactly 33.6 years. It recalibrates and starts over. Okay, where do we get that 354? Well, we got that from just looking at the eclipse pairs. You will actually find that eclipses are connected by 354 days, showing you this cycle of 354. 29.5 times 12 months gives you exactly 354. And if you go back to that, again, we talked about the lunar year. We showed exactly where that comes from. We showed where the solar year comes from, and all the way back to the beginning of this of talking about the very beginning of the 360 year versus the 365.2424. So as you can see, all that comes together to tie in the scripture together, the life of Jesus, the numbers together to show you the timeline because we are very much in these 7 years of tribulation and we are ending it and moving into the 75 days of basically change unlike anything you've ever seen before. All right, get your nine vibes aligned.